full name is Brian Fieldhouse. Was in country from November 1966 to the end of November in 1967. I left about 14 days early because I came over on right after the Marine Corps birthday, 10 November. That was about the 12th, I think. 12th or 13th, I arrived in country. And I left around the 29th, give or take a day. And I was first assigned to Bravo Company 3rd Tanks. And then I went to Charlie Company 3rd Tanks. And I spent the last approximately 2 months at Headquarters and Service Company, H&S Company. That, what I was doing there, we were refurbishing the tank that we had, which is pretty worn out. It was our last vehicle remaining of our three tank section. We had one that I was driving previously had been lost to a mine blast that had warped the hull. Therefore, it had to go out of the country for repair. And the other one was worn out, and it went out of country for repair in July of '67, and that was when I was still in Charlie Company, and had an odd time in the companies. There were various things. In Bravo Company, I was a driver and a gunner, and then they gave me a tank as a PFC, which is ludicrous, but they did it, and I accomplished the mission they wanted. I was promoted to Lance Corporal, and then about 30 days later, I was promoted again to Corporal. I had gotten a meritorious promotion, and those you can get it once. You can't have 2 in a row, so therefore I got my junior NCO stripes, and on a hillside just outside the Ashaw Valley. Came to me as a stunning revelation, because I didn't think that was ever happening, and all those things changed me as a person. The experiences, meeting all the people, and living what we did. I was a flame tank crewman. I did have got to do what I wished one time, when that was being on a gun tank, and but I always accepted that they said, "We want you here." That's what I did. You follow orders. And that was it. There were ways to get around. I could have volunteered there, but I liked the people I was with, and I just went with the flow, because I knew it was going to be a long 13 months. And later on, I had time to reflect on that. And by 6 months, you're probably mentally worn out. And I would go on to see that in further military service, that past 6 months, you begin to change a little bit in your attitude and what you do. So you're pretty good for those first six months. And that you relatively are fairly efficient, and you reach a peak efficiency about that point. It doesn't mean you're unusual, but
What were your first 6 months like?
Very interesting, very interesting. We had that first gun mission, and I was at a Headquarters and Service Company, and I think that was just something to get us acclimated. But for me, the first mission, they gave us a briefing at about 9 or 10 in the evening, and said we were going to get up about 02, I think, is what we were going to get up to. So that didn't mean we weren't going to get much sleep. I didn't sleep. I just, kind of laid around till we had to do what we had to do. And I was the gunner, and I did what the gunner should do. We didn't really need to open fire on anything. We were just overwatching infantry action. Not hard. Then I went to B Company, and we had some interesting things. I went back to H&S for repairs, and that's when I had my teeth shot out by the driving rod of the 30 caliber machine gun. And it went this way past me, so, because if it had hit me in the head, I would have been dead. But and I didn't learn until the Seattle reunion that it was a friend of mine, Dave Nicodemus, he was a sergeant, that had accidentally let that go. And what they were supposed to do is you're supposed to point it down because it has the power of a 22 short, so they say. It would have killed me. But so it took 3 teeth out, and I had to live with that till July of '67 when I figured a way out through telling a little untruth to get the Navy to make me a set of temporary dentures, because I hated walking around missing 3 teeth. I got by that, and we started doing missions, and then we started doing security work on the bridge at Hill 55, the south of 55, and that was cool. Then we started doing the road sweeps, and each day they would sweep the road going south of Hill 55, all the way, partially way to Anwa, which is a base we had. And so we would do that sweep. And for a while it was not much happened. We swept the road, came back, everything was all good. Then one day, we weren't down there at that time, but one tank got hit with mines, and they had to end the sweep, and they brought it back. And they sent us down. We would be the second tank in the sweep to protect the engineers and the squad of infantry. So, okay, we've done this before, no big deal. That night, VC came up to our perimeter and started opening fire with a BAR. I was sitting in the cupola with a brand new person out of the States. So this was his first time out here, just about. And I was reading Casino Royale by Ian Fleming, and I shut the white light off, and I asked him what was going on, and I made sure the radio was on. I wanted to hear the SITREP, situation report, that needed to be made because we were taking fire, and nothing was happening. And I'm going, this is not good. And Sergeant Nicodemus and one other crewman were in the bunker, and the tank up high up on the elevated road was firing at the VC. Now, I don't know if they were hitting him, but they were firing at the VC. So I said, I got to do something because they're not making a call. And I called it in, and they asked for our coordinates. Now, I was pretty good at reading a map, but in the panic, I could not find the map that matched where we were. So I said, well, I am not getting this done. So I said, I got to go get this done. So maybe they'll get it. I'll go over to the other tank. But getting to the other tank was a little bit of an issue because there was just mud there. And I got out of the vehicle. I told this Howard Buddy Walters, you got the submachine gun, you're okay. I'm just going to go about 15 yards to our left, but I had a zigzag to do that. I go to the back of the tank and jump off because it's pitch dark out there, and my left leg goes up to my knee in mud. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to pull on the mud, and someone throws a grenade in the distance, and that at that point that gave me impetus to get my leg out of there. So I gave it one big pull, got loose, and there was a burned out Amtrak, which I do have pictures, and I ran to that. I had my 45 in hand, and I thought about that for a moment and said, this is pretty stupid because they've got an automatic rifle and I have a pistol, virtually useless. So I have to do something about that. So then I slipped around the amphibious tractor, and I got to the roadway, and off to my right was the barbed wire and the entrance to the road. It was sealed, shut. And to my left was the tank. I hadn't told them I was coming, and now I was fairly nervous about this because I said, I'm crawling along the far side of the bank away from the firing, and they don't know I'm coming. So I said, these guys already appear to be nervous because they had just come back off of a float. They had been in Okinawa for a period of time, and so they were back in country. And this was, I think, the first time they had seen action since Okinawa. So I took pondered that, and so I moved up a few more feet, and I said, I have to do this. I'm going to have to make some noise and get their attention so they don't shoot me. So I stood up, remembering it's really pitch dark out there, so it's hard to see anyone, but you can still see shadows sometimes. And I said in my voice, I said, don't shoot. And so I walk over to the tank. I'm immediately over to the side of the tank, and I tell them what happened. We need the coordinates. The company needs the coordinates. And I don't know. To me, I didn't know if they had it marked down or not because we were maybe 300 meters from the CP. So, but I didn't want to say that over the radio because you don't say those things over the radio. And so I told him, and I said, I don't know if this is going to work, but I figured he'd call, because that's what I meant him to do. You finish up the call. That wasn't what he did. I get in the tank, and I get back down, sitting in the gunner seat, because Buddy was still sitting there, and it was his turn on the watch. And I meandered my way through the mud and that. And lo and behold, these guys shout the coordinates across the perimeter. I was dumbfounded. I said, "What?" I wanted to shout back, "What are you doing?" But I said, "Okay, never mind." So I gave him the coordinates. And I thought everything was done, and that was the end of that evening. So we had a interesting front night, and so the next day we take off down the road. We're getting down the road, and I'm driving, and Sergeant Nicodemus is in the commander's station, and our gunner, because these were 3-man crews. We had a big tank of 300 gallons of napalm in the turret, and so I'm sitting there, and I'm just lolling around, and I'm going down the roadway, staying in the tracks of the vehicle in front of me, but I've slipped about 30 yards behind, maybe 35, and I've been creeping a couple, 2-3 miles an hour. We're just moving down because there's sleeping mines up ahead. And Dave says to me over the intercom, he says, "Kick it in the ass." And I said, "Okay." And I goosed it. the throttle, and I moved about a few feet, and I heard a bang, explosion to my rear, and all of a sudden, the turret's turning around, and Dave is firing a machine gun, and I realized what had happened. They had fired an RPG at us, and he must have had it lined up just before I hit the gas pedal, because when I hit it, he missed to the rear. And so, well, we didn't know later that Dave had a piece of shrapnel just cross the top of his hand. It was just a scrape. And when we were done firing, because I pulled my pistol out, so I was going to shoot this guy who was 200 meters away. That wasn't happening. But I got that done, and we ended the sweep at that point. So that was the end on day 2. We lost the tank on day 1. So day 2 we didn't get the sweep done. So we went through the next night, things, okay. And during that night we were teasing Sergeant Nicodemus. We said, Dave, you had no guts to get a cheap Purple Heart or go to the corpsman, and he said he couldn't do that, because it was a scratch, and so that was it. We just kept teasing him about that. Next day we're out on the sweep. We get a little further down the road, and I look up at the tank in front of me. There's a flash and a bang, and the tank lifts up. Another mine they had successfully planted. Remember, the mine people sweeping the mines, they were they had walked over that mine, so they missed it with their detectors. Because generally those mines are made out of metal, they're circular, and they hit that one. So the loader on that vehicle was injured fairly badly. He had to go out to the hospital ship. So it wasn't, it wasn't any small injuries, but so he got wounded and he was out, and we took the tank back, and that was out of action. So now we've lost 2 tanks, and so the next day, we successfully get all the way down to the bend in the road where it heads off to Anois. And we're all, even gave a little cheer. Most of the Marines piled up on the first vehicle, turned around and headed back. We had successfully cleared the road. Everything was good. And we were about less than a quarter mile from the bridgehead, and I'm looking at the tank in front. Actually, I'm not looking at the tank. I'm watching the tracks, and I'm tracking it to stay in the same track so we don't roll over a mine. And I feel the tank lift. And I had gone over this scenario in my head time after time, what to do if said, if you feel something, hit the brakes. Because we didn't want to run the track off, because you wind up towing the tank in with a tank retriever. And the tank rose up, and when it settled down, I had stopped it. I did what I had wanted to do. I had stopped the tank. And so I'm thinking about that, momentarily, and then I start cursing into the mic. So I'm thinking I'm talking to myself, but no, I wasn't talking to myself, because I hadn't realized that in that moment when the mine had gone off in the back right rear of the tank, that one of the sandbags that was holding the machine gun we had up on the turret, the machine gun had broken loose from the force, and it had passed over me into the mud. And the sandbag hit me right in the back of the neck. And it was pushing, it wrapped around, it was pushing on our little handset there to turn it on. So it was keying into the intercom. And I was cursing into the intercom very loudly because I didn't think anyone could hear me. And it turned out that the gunner could, and he told me to shut up. I'm thinking, what the hell? And I pushed the sandbag off, and I had noticed the corpsman running down. He jumped off the lead vehicle, and he ran through there because they usually planted anti-personnel mines around that because we had lost Sergeant Miller a few weeks earlier, the very same thing on that roadway. And so, I was a little hesitant, but I say that Navy corpsman, he ran, and he was the first one to get there. I was getting out of the driver's position to see what was going on. And here, Dave was laying on top of Lance Corporal Parks. And I'm only going to use his name in this because I've forgotten his first name, what I thought, and what Sergeant Nicodemus, when I saw him up in Seattle, when we got together the first time in all those years, he seemed to think it was another name. I could be wrong, 40, 50 years of might switch your, it was Brad or Bill, one of the two. Anyway, he was being, Nicodemus was laying on him, and we had to get him out. He was unconscious, and so we pulled him out of the vehicle with the corpsman and I guess myself. But I was sitting there thinking, it was hitting the rear. At first I thought maybe we'd been hit by a recoilless rifle, but I thought, no, that couldn't do that. It wouldn't lift the tank up. And I looked out the back and I realized the crater was about 10 feet across. So I knew that it was a blast bigger than a normal mine. And out in the field lay the road housing, and we weren't going out there to get that. But what we did do when the tank retriever got there was, and we got Sergeant Nicodemus and the two infantrymen who survived the blast. The one was right over it. I don't know how he survived it. I couldn't imagine how his body could have taken that concussion and stayed alive, but he did. He was blown over the tank. Obviously to our left front. Everything went that way. All our tools, everything was all buried in the mud. And but they survived, all of them. Dave was semi-conscious when we put him into a amphibious tractor, and then they took it up to Hill 55 and they medevaced him out. And so we got in there. One of the mechanics put some oil in it. The engine block was cracked, but we put oil in it. We put the track back together. We took our spare track and put it together. We were driving with one less road wheel, but we got it to move. That way we didn't have to touch it. It was very interesting. Later on, we would find that the vehicle had irreparable damage, and they would send it to the States. If they could repair it there, fine, but it wasn't repairable at Okinawa. Yeah, so that finished that, and the upshot of that, we lost 3 tanks over a space of 4 days. And our CO, Dix Gardner, captain, he decided that we wouldn't physically cover the road sweeps anymore because we couldn't afford to lose tanks at that rate. We would wipe out half the company just sweeping mines. So then from there on, we covered the a part of the road sweep from the hill one of the gun tanks would cover it from the hill, keeping an eye on the whole road. Because since we were 150 feet in there, 165 or so feet up, we had a good vision of the road down there. There is, later on, I did see it, and I have kept that issue of Leatherneck magazine that talked about the road coming south of Hill 55, and it was reprinted a few years ago in Leatherneck magazine. So I have the original copy at home, a little weathered, but I have the original copy of Leatherneck of that road, and it was an unfriendly road. From there on, we did routine things until April of '67, and the 9th Marines headquarters was on Hill 55, and they moved that up to, I believe, Fubai or Camp Evans, one of the two, but they moved it north. Everyone moved north on there, and the 1st Tanks and the 1st Division came up, moved their headquarters up to Da Nang, and that was in preparation for Operation Hickory. At that point, we had one operating tank. The tank that was damaged by the mine blast was Foxtrot 3-2. We had remaining Foxtrot 3-3, which had on its gun tube Toyuan, which meant, they told me it meant "I love you," and that's what we had written on the gun tube, a little dark humor. And I have double checked it and triple checked it and quadruple checked it to make sure that was exactly what it meant, and that's exactly what it meant. I have gone through multiple sources, so when I tell the story, I'm not telling something that's wrong or that, because it was written in Vietnamese. And the name of Foxtrot 3-2 was Snoopy versus the Viet Cong, and I guess the Yellow Baron got us. So our last tank was Little Hot Stuff. It had I don't know who had the idea of putting a red devil on the front of the tank. I thought that was an extremely bad idea to put a big red dot on your tank, since we were targets to begin with, and that it said Little Hot Stuff on it. Now that went to Okinawa, so it was rebuilt and came back. It's possible John Ware thought he got a new tank. He may have, but that one I do know was being repaired. I found that out when I got to H&S Company in September of '67. And then, so they sent Sergeant Gladney, who one day in March, off the hand, because we had, after Sergeant Nicodemus left, the only sergeant we had, or NCO we had, was Sergeant Gladney. Everyone else was, there was Lance Corporal Parks, and then the rest of the people were PFCs, and they came in and out like a revolving door. Buddy Walters and myself were about one of the only two constants in the section, and so we had lost. We were now no longer a section. We were one tank and one flame tank. So they turned to me because when they repaired 3-2, when we drove it to the 3rd Tank maintenance in March, we had put the pack out of 3-1 into 3-2, and so 3-1 had, they didn't even have a pack in it. It was done. They were going to put one in, and so Sergeant Gladney was sitting there, and he turned he turned to the other guys at the, we're all standing in a group. Why, I don't know, but we were on the hillside at 55, Hill 55, and he said, looked over at me, I'm a PFC, of course. He says, Fieldhouse here is going to be your section leader. And I thought, Sergeant Gladney has lost his mind, frankly. I'm doing nothing but a crewman. That's what I'm going to be. So a month later, he comes up to me and he says, you take PFC Mullins here, and you're going to first tanks, and you wait, they're going to put a pack in that, and you bring it up to us. They'll put you, they'll bring you up, you'll come up to the unit, which I thought was B Company. But I found out later, because I stopped getting mail, that they had transferred us to Charlie Company. Why? I think they had lost a vehicle too, so we formed a two-tank section at that point, because we got the vehicle repaired, and I had made myself gotten a little argument with them because I was following my orders up at First Tanks, and I had to ultimately go to the First Tank Battalion Sergeant Major to get it straightened out, and he did that, and so the maintenance people didn't like me, and but I did what I was told, and everything worked out. But they waited till the very last moment to tell me I needed to get the tank down to the landing zone in Da Nang, and I would follow this truck. And we did, although I had one very scary moment going through Da Nang, because we're following the truck was driving about 20 miles an hour, 25, so we're going fast for a tank. And there was this house along the road we were going, and in the front of the house was these hedges about 5 feet tall. And I could see this woman, Vietnamese woman, walking out of the house. And she walked out, and there was just a small passageway in the hedges for her to go out on the street. And the Dusnaf had passed, and I'm sitting in the commander's cupola, and I'm looking, I'm saying, doesn't she see us? Because she's not looking at us at all. And before I could say something to Mullins, we just passed it, and she stopped at that very edge of that hedge. I know she saw it in the corner of an eye because I didn't want to hit anyone. I couldn't even reach my mic fast enough to tell him to stop, and she just stood there, about 18 inches from our vehicle. It was just scary, maybe 24 inches, but it was close. I couldn't imagine someone doing that. You would think you'd at least wait till we got past you. So we get in there, a little drama getting the tank on the boat, but we sail all the way up to Dong Ha, and up on near the DMZ. And one of our passengers who was tank riding on my tank, he ran immediately to the maintenance people because my left-hand final drive was missing, or leaking, not missing, what I'm saying. It was missing, or dry, it was dripping oil. But the Operation Hickory, which was the biggest operation in the war to that point, including Vietnamese and all myriad units, and they were running an operation sweeps through the DMZ and the surrounding areas. And I was supposed to get it up ready to go out on the operation, and how do I put this? This guy runs and tells them that was seeping the final drive. So now we had to replace the final drive. I wasn't a happy camper with this. Basically, they were putting on new gaskets, I think. So we took it all apart, and these are 1-inch bolts, and there were 12 of them. I broke 6 of them. Yeah, I used a cheater bar, and because they were frozen in place, all the bolts. I broke 6, and I thought, we're gonna send this out like this. I said, okay, and so we get it all together, and I park it in the tank park, and now it's May 17th. This was May 16th, 1967. We already had one mortar attack, and then at Dong Ha, but that wasn't too bad. But I was up by an army unit, artillery unit, watching a movie, and we had that was with a mortar attack. And then I was sleeping that night, May 17th, 1967, 3 in the morning. They just literally plastered Dong Ha. They hit Charlie Med, I think it was Charlie or Delta Med, for the first rounds. Great. And they hit the med facilities, and they marched them all across. That was the most fearful I was in Vietnam. I was sleeping there. I always laid everything out in case something happened. I could grab it. Mm-hmm. But what happened was I jumped up out of the cot, and it was 3 a.m., and I grab one boot, I can't find the other. Grab one shower shoe, I can't find that. Can't find my web gear. I didn't grab my carbine, so I just ran out and jumped in a hole, which was already occupied, and people jumped on top of me, and they were shaking. And I learned to specifically pray to see the morning. I didn't ask to survive the war, just see the morning. I didn't want to go like that. And because you could hear them coming in, the rounds, the rockets and the artillery, and you could hear them marching closer, and it's kind of a sick feeling. And then you kind of relax a little when they're going over you, because now they're passing over us. So that lasted for half hour or so. We got out. I got jumped in my clothes and grabbed my web gear and helmet, and we just waited around to spent the rest of the night up or day. And when the first light, we looked down, and right by my tank, there was a spot where either a 122 artillery or 130 or 122 rocket or a 130 artillery piece had landed. It had landed at a flat angle, so it didn't create a big crater, but you could see where it hit. And I was so, I didn't know whether it was happy or sad. But it almost hit my tank. I just worked all those days and hours, and it almost destroyed it. We got hit by a rocket. I would have not done that any good. But we got it together. I went out on Operation Hickory. Had a nasty accident out there when we were recompressing the tanks, and the valve that's supposed to pop up wouldn't. So I said, we can't keep the tank tethered to the compressor truck. So I had my driver unscrew it, and I said I'd hold it. What happened was I was trying to hold 3,000 pounds back. That didn't work. It spun me up in the air, spun me 180 degrees, and I landed on the front slope plate, slapped down on that, and somehow caught my glasses, and I landed on my feet. I thought my face was crushed because I couldn't feel anything, and I couldn't see anything, so I touched all around my face, realized that my face wasn't broken, and then I realized I'm blind. I can't see anything. And then one eye opened, tears down there, and the other one made it. And that was nasty, but I was happy. Then we stayed out, bivouacked just southeast of Cantienne, and we met up with a full tank platoon from Charlie Company who bivouacked in our area. We went all the way back to Dong Ha, and then eventually sailed down the coast and up the river to Wei. We got off at Wei and went up to Camp Evans. I stayed there till July. We did a bunch of reconnaissance. We ran into some NVA in one spot and opened up on them. Then we were sent up on an operation that General Westmoreland had wanted, and General Walt had decided that he would send one battalion instead of a regiment. So we went towards the Ashaw Valley with 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, reinforced with tank platoon and the flame tank, a couple Army Dusters, which are twin 40 millimeter anti-aircraft guns that we used as field guns, and we did running patrols, and that was we run, not patrols I should say, running convoys back and forth, because we were split into 3 elements: Charlie in the rear, Delta in the center, and then Alpha and Bravo up there. And they fired into the Ashaw Valley and onto the Ho Chi Minh Trail, because later on we got a 3rd battery of 175 artillery. And we finished that. We spent 2 months, two and a half months, I think the operation lasted. And then we pulled out of that. And my vehicle was the last one out, and I thought while we were doing it, I said, we're an assault force and we're doing a withdrawal. Very rare for the Marines to withdraw from a position, and we were doing that. We weren't trained to do that, we just did it. And because we were the last vehicle out. It was the 3-3 was the last one out. We went to H&S Company at the end of September, and I stayed there for the next 2 months, and I came home. And I thought I was done with the military at that point, but went back in a couple of years later to as a full-time Army Guardsman. But it was quite an experience, especially doing the recons and the convoys. Yeah, we took a lot of hits on the convoys, but didn't lose any. I think we only lost 1 Marine during the whole, not a tanker, during the whole action. But that was really lucky. And that was my tour in just a short. There were a lot of other things that we could go on hours with, but that's what I did there. And you just do your. When I was talking to a few others, you just do your duty, and if you do your job, whatever happens, you just do your job. And some go beyond when the circumstances happen, or you have to do something. But if you do your job, you'll come out in the end very well. Most of the people here, and I've talked to a lot of others, have said that they didn't mention the war when they get back from it. Now I'm sure the guys that were still staying in the Corps would mention it because it's what they're doing. And in my case, though, I went from Vietnam to Okinawa for a day, and then then to California for a few days, and I was home and out. And I had leave to the end of my tour, and then I was in civilian life on in the reserve status, not active reserve, but the ready reserve. And I just figured that's what life was going to be for me. And but 2 years later, became what they call a full-time Army Guardsman, where I worked in uniform. So basically, it was a soldier paid differently than the folks out there, a lot more money. And there weren't a lot of people from Vietnam, and so I just never brought it up while I was there. And I didn't realize how it had affected me, and how it affects everyone, all the people there, differently for what you did. You know, if you were in a combat arms like tankers or infantry, you have a little bit different perspective on what happened, and that is one of the things that I noted in all the people here, because we all have a several shared bonds. One, the crucible of becoming a Marine, and secondly, serving in a specific designation, in this case armor, tanks, and thirdly, going into a war, and what happens in a war. And that affects everybody. Yep. You know, I was incredibly lucky in Vietnam. Incredibly lucky to hold a position that I did in an armored unit, and to become relatively unscathed, at least physically. Sure. Most of the close calls, what I call the near-death experiences, 3 of them were accidents, because working on tanks is, everything's big, everything is tightly managed, and a lot of things can harm people because it's so big, so huge, it's so powerful. And those were things that you never had to forget. You had to keep a wary eye.
Well, Brian, thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you for taking time for us, and thank you for your service.
I appreciate it. It's been an interesting career. It helped me along in my other 24 years of service, and